This is one of the most shocking and impactful stories in the entire Bible, a sad and cruel episode marked in the Book of Judges. If you are very sensitive, I suggest not watching this video. Welcome to the Illustrated Bible channel. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Today's video will be a bit different, but it's important for us to know about sad stories, to understand that when man distances himself from God, evil finds space to harm and destroy what God created. Get ready to discover how a single deception can change the course of a nation. Join me and witness a life lesson that will remain eternally engraved in your memories. Don't look away. This is an account that every individual should hear at least once in their life. Although there is a section in the Old Testament that, to be frank, I consider the most shocking among all biblical stories, so impactful that it might be deemed inappropriate for a younger audience. The plot unfolds in chapters 19 to 21 of the Book of Judges. While many are aware of chapter 19, few are familiar with the entire narrative in these verses. There are valuable lessons to be drawn from this impactful story. Firstly, the events are presented dramatically. We begin with Judges 19 verse 1, when there was no king in Israel. A Levite lived in a remote region, in the hills of Ephraim, finding a companion from Bethlehem in Judah to be his concubine. Picture this: a Levite in the north of Israel and this woman, now his concubine or wife, coming from the south of Bethlehem. However, the story takes a different turn. Unfortunately, she did not remain faithful to him, choosing to return to her father's house in Bethlehem of Judah, staying there for 4 months after this betrayal. The Levite, determined to retrieve his partner, leaves his home in the hills of Ephraim and heads south to Bethlehem with the aim of bringing her back. Upon arrival, he receives a warm welcome from her father. Several times, the Levite attempts to depart, stating he needs to continue his journey. "Give me my wife, for I must return." However, the woman's father insists he stays a little longer, saying, "Stay here for the night." And again the next morning he agrees, saying, "Now I must go." But the father, once again persuaded, insists, "It is late. Stay another night." This situation persisted for a few days. Finally, with respect and gratitude, the Levite thanked them for their hospitality, but emphasized his need to depart. They journeyed together, the Levite and the concubine. Now, the story takes a dark turn as they travel from Bethlehem in the south to Ephraim in the north. They face a dilemma as nightfall approaches near Jebus. The servant suggests, "Shall we stop in this Jebusite city for the night?" However, the Levite refuses, choosing not to proceed. "It is better not to stop in a foreign city where we have no fellow Israelites. Let's go to Gibeah," he decides. The suggestion was to stop in a nearby city as it was getting dark, but the Levite sought safety among his own community, perhaps in Gibeah or Ramah, where they could find refuge. He reflects. So they continue their journey, and twilight catches up with them near Gibeah in Benjamin. Upon reaching Gibeah, they encounter an unexpected situation. No one offers them shelter, an unusual attitude in Israelite hospitality culture. During the night, an elder approaches in the square and inquires why they are still outside, asking if anyone offered them hospitality. Upon learning they were stranded, he quickly offers, "You can spend the night at my house." The grateful Levite explains that they have food for both themselves and their animals, needing only a place to rest. The kind elder insists, "Do not worry, my house is open to you," said the elder. The servant and the concubine settle in the older man's residence. However, on that night in Gibeah, a terrible event unfolds while they seek rest. Malicious men from the city surround the house, knocking on the door with sinister demands. They wish to take the Levite, the guest, to abuse him. These men surrounding the house are Benjaminites known for their cruel intentions. They press the host, asking for the foreigner inside to be handed over, as they desire to abuse him. The owner, overwhelmed by despair, steps out and pleads, "Please, refrain from committing this terrible act. He is my guest. Do not do this under my roof. I am willing to offer my daughter and the concubine in his place, but please spare this man." This part of the story is controversial and merits further reflection. However, the subsequent unfolding surpassed any imagination. Disregarding the pleas, the Levite handed his concubine to the men outside, and what they did to her throughout that night is described as an indescribable brutality, ceasing only at dawn. This tragic turn of events reinforces the warning about the sensitive nature of this video, which could evoke painful memories. Picture the distressing scene, a group of men committing atrocities against this woman throughout the night. Only in the early morning, exhausted, they released her, but her condition was profoundly lamentable. The next morning, upon returning, she succumbed to exhaustion and suffering at the entrance of her master's house. After a night of horror, she could hardly move, dragging herself backward and finally collapsing, powerless, on the porch. What follows is even more devastating. As he rises in the morning and opens the door, he finds a desperate scene of his concubine lying prostrate on the ground. He commands, "We need to go." But there is no reaction. The violence she suffered was so extreme that it took her life. The Levite then carried her lifeless body on his donkey and returned home. What happens next is profoundly dark and macabre. Upon arrival, he makes a shocking decision. With a knife, he dismembers the concubine's body into 12 parts, each representing a limb, and sends them throughout the territory of Israel. A terrifying and unimaginable message. Those who witnessed, astonished, remarked that something so horrible had never been seen since the beginning of the Israelites' exodus from Egypt. "Here is something to reflect upon, discuss, and talk about," said the people. The man, taking the concubine back, dismembered her and attached a message to each piece of the body, distributing them among the 12 tribes of Israel. He recounted the atrocious act committed by the Benjaminites, their own brothers. The other tribes, upon seeing and understanding what happened to the woman, were shocked and dismayed. At that time, in Israel, the absence of a king resulted in a lack of accountability, where there was no need to justify our actions. This vacuum of leadership and absence of enforced laws led to reckless decisions, believing that we would act without consequences. This reflected in Israel. Without a leader or enforced laws, society took a dangerous path, resulting in unimaginable actions. Another crucial lesson is about human dignity, where every person reflects the divine image. Despite suggesting that harming the guest would be wrong, the man offers his daughter and the concubine, prioritizing the man's life and honor over the women. This prompts us to reflect on the respect owed to all human beings. Now, we come to the third crucial lesson of this video. As we distance ourselves from God, the likelihood of engaging in acts we never imagined capable of increases. Upon analyzing the book of Judges, we observe a progressive departure from God by the people of Israel. Chapters 19 to 21 mark the climax of this distancing, revealing how far the nation was from its faith. The truth is, we are not far from it. If we lose our connection with the divine, if we stray from the path like the Israelites, we might be surprised to perform actions that, for years, we considered impossible. Thinking about this, I realize that no matter how much I see myself as someone immune to betrayals, dismissals due to inappropriate behavior at work, or involvement with illegal substances, all these certainties vanish as we distance ourselves from God. This disconnection makes us more prone to failures and transgressions. However, the narrative of Judges does not end in chapter 19. Although we wished it did, the reality is more disturbing. Chapter 20 describes a devastating internal conflict, a civil war between the 11 tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin. The reason behind this conflict was the atrocious and sinful act committed against one of the Israelite brothers by the tribe of Benjamin. I recommend reading Judges chapters 20 and 21 to fully grasp these events. In general terms, chapter 20 depicts a colossal battle that resulted in the loss of countless lives on both sides. In the aftermath, only 600 men of Benjamin survived. Chapter 21 brings forth a feeling of compassion from the other 11 tribes toward Benjamin. They feared the extinction of the tribe, as although there were 600 men, there were no Benjamite women to marry and maintain the lineage. This sequence of events underscores the fourth crucial point. Every wrong choice we make brings consequences beyond our control. The actions of the Benjamites were undeniably wrong, triggering a reaction from the other 11 tribes who opted for violence and faced their own consequences. Similarly, the Benjamites had to deal with the repercussions of their actions. It's crucial to remember that we can choose our actions, but we don't have control over the consequences they bring. The story takes an even more complex turn when the Israelites attack a group known as the Daughters of Shiloh, and, after defeating them, find 400 unmarried women. These are given to 400 of the 600 surviving Benjamites for marriage and offspring. However, a dilemma arises. There are 600 men and only 400 available women, revealing a severe imbalance and the complexity of the consequences of hasty choices. Faced with this scenario, an additional problem emerges. 200 Benjamite men remain without wives, highlighting a chain of bad decisions where one leads to another. The Israelites, facing this dilemma, recall an oath not to give their daughters in marriage to the Benjamites. However, they find a controversial solution in this vote that doesn't prohibit them. The daughters are forcibly taken, and the Israelites opt for a morally questionable solution. They inform the Benjamites of an upcoming festival where the young Israelite women will dance and celebrate. We cannot offer our daughters to you due to our oath. However, if they happen to be captured during the festival, the responsibility lies solely with them, and our oath remains intact. During the festival, the remaining 200 Benjamites execute a bold plan. They seize these women in the midst of the celebration and take them as wives. This story, full of twists, is truly surprising, and I have done my best to summarize its teaching clearly. One wrong choice often triggers another, and a succession of errors can affect countless lives. I invite everyone to revisit this narrative and realize the negative impact these unfortunate decisions caused to several people. While some men of Benjamin might have deserved their fate, many innocents who had nothing to do with the events lost their lives in the conflict. The same applies to the inhabitants of Shiloh, whose men were killed and whose women were forced to live among the Benjamites. Furthermore, other women were violently separated from their families by the Benjamites. All this was the result of a sequence of wrong choices. However, it does not end here. The fifth and final lesson I want to highlight is that, despite our mistakes and destructive choices, God's grace remains with us. Even in the moments of greatest discouragement and error, there is hope for redemption and divine mercy. Now, let's observe the conclusion of the book of Judges. The Benjamites, following the plan, obtained the necessary women among the dancers. They returned to their lands and rebuilt their lives and cities. During this period, each Israelite regroups, each reclaiming their heritage, and the book concludes with a phrase that encapsulates its essence. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. This story shows us that despite God's mercy, allowing the reconstruction of the tribe of Benjamin, avoiding its extinction, the consequences of their actions were inevitable. If there is a lesson to be drawn from this story, it is that every choice we make carries consequences, often beyond our understanding or control. We have just explored one of the most surprising and insight-filled stories from the Bible, revealing how each choice has the power to shape our destiny. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. If you found this story fascinating, there is much more awaiting you. Do you want to continue this journey of incredible discoveries? Then don't forget to follow our channel right now. Leave your like, comment your impressions, and share this video. With every click, you draw closer to more revelations and learnings that can transform your worldview. Remember, every story we share is a window to new perspectives and wisdom. Are you ready for more? Join us on this ongoing journey of discovery and inspiration until the next video.